Challenging.
Transformative.
A bitch.
Confusing.
Moonshot.
Reborn.
Goals.
Innovation.
Was it the same for you during lunchtime? You're just about to go and eat, but then you don't know where to go and eat. Do we go and get a poke bowl in the restaurant? Or do we go to a salad bar? Or do we go and get some real food in a real restaurant? All of these questions. Unless, of course, you know a restaurant that has such a good marketing strategy that you go there blindly. This brings us on to our next topic, Marketing 4.0, and combining retail branding and performance. We have some insight from the retail side, but also the marketplace side, to talk to us about this e-commerce topic.
Thanks, Sophie, for that intro. And it's so exciting to be here as a part of Lengow Day. It's an event I've wanted to attend for a couple of years now. So it's great to be here, especially to be here the year where it really is literally opened up to the world. So thank you, all of you, wherever you are, whatever your time zone is right now. Thank you for tuning in and joining us. My name's Chloe Thomas. I'm the host of the E-commerce Master Plan and Keep Optimizing podcast. I've been in this e-commerce world for over 15 years now. And throughout that time, whatever I've been up to, I've been engaged in helping people solve their marketing problems, whether it's the companies I worked for, the clients I had when I had a marketing agency, or the listeners to my podcast and the readers of my books. Which is why when they asked me to host one of these panel sessions and they gave me the option of Marketing 4.0, I was like, yes, that sounds right up my street. So for the next 45 minutes or so, me and the marvelous panelists are going to be helping you to solve your marketing problems by discussing Marketing 4.0, how to combine brand and performance. So I think we should probably get the panelists on right now and find out a little bit more about them. First up, we've got Roger, who's in charge of marketing and communications at German retailer Otto. Hello, Roger.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Could you let everyone know a little bit more about your marketing background, please?
Yes, of course. So yeah, my name is Roger, and I work for Otto, which is Germany's largest retailer. And I started off marketing quite late in my professional career, to be honest. Because I started off in the digital music business and then got into marketing like 7 or 8 years ago. And I joined a digital agency over here in Hamburg called Elbtutler, where I then became a managing partner, and we consulted quite a lot of international brands like Johnson & Johnson or Philips on their way to digital leadership. And then I switched sides last year and joined a Silicon Valley-based company called Wonder Workshop, where I was in charge as the marketing director for the German territory and set up marketing over here. And then I started to join Otto in October last year, where I oversee everything in terms of marketing communications.
Excellent. See, I told you all watching, we have some serious marketing talent in this panel for you, and Roger's just proved that. Okay, next up we have Nicholas. He's the CEO and co-founder at Melvin and Hamilton Digital. So Nicholas, could you tell us a little bit more about your marketing background?
Yes, absolutely. Hey, Chloe. Hey, everyone. First of all, thanks for inviting me. It's a great opportunity. I love to participate here in this roundtable. So I've created Melvin Hamilton Digital in 2012. Before that, I had a background as a consultant. After my university time, I started in traditional management consultant. Went on to work in the marketing department for Apple Europe for 4 years. Spent a couple of months in Cupertino. And this is where I slipped into the startup scene. Once I came back from Cupertino, I joined a freshly started German startup called Ciao.com, which the older in the audience here might still remember as being one of the price comparison engines in the early 2000s. And since then, I've been doing different projects in the internet. Started my own consulting company, and since 2012, I started Melvin Hamilton Digital. The brand Melvin and Hamilton is a shoe and accessory brand created in about 30 years ago in 1988 by the father of two very good friends of mine, and they're really into the branding and product development, and they asked me to build a digital business. So this is how it came to this setup.
Excellent. Okay, and then last but very much not least, we have Casper, who's head of international sales and who's head of international sales at the largest e-commerce marketplace in the EEC. How could I stumble that? Shame on me. Casper, can you tell us a little bit more about your background, please?
Thank you. So great to be here. My name is Kaz Perezmbaum. I lead international sales in Allegro, which indeed is the largest marketplace, e-commerce marketplace in Central Eastern Europe, with over 20 million customers regularly shopping every month. My background, I worked for several years in management consulting in McKinsey & Company, and the marketing and sales practice, where I advised different consumer and technology companies on topics related to marketing. And some time ago, I moved to Allegro. I'm leading the international sales side, so mostly focused on bringing the international merchants, international sellers to Allegro, helping them grow, helping them also use the different marketing and branding tools available on Allegro. So very happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, we have our marvelous panelists. So I think it's about time we got stuck into helping all of you who've tuned in to watch to solve your marketing problems, to understand what's coming up and what you need to be focusing on with your marketing in the future. So in 2020, we have seen a huge surge in both consumers moving their spend from offline to online. We've also seen a lot of retailers taking their first step or really heavily investing in that online channel due to the way that consumers have been choosing to do their purchases. This all makes it more essential than ever before for retailers to really cut through, to really stand out in order to get those sales. So, panelists, what would you recommend to those who are listening to help them stand out, to help those e-commerce brands stand out in the current market that we're approaching? Casper, I can see you nodding there. So you ready to come in on this one?
Of course. So, as a representative of Allegro, which is a marketplace, I think unless, if the retailer wants to go direct, it could choose own channels or could choose e-commerce marketplace. And I think, especially in this current environment, choosing e-commerce marketplace is really a great way to relatively quickly build its presence online. So this is what we've seen on Allegro, and especially last couple of months, a lot of new companies joined Allegro. A lot of buyers also joined Allegro, and we as a platform, we provided tools both for the companies, the retailers joining, so offering really attractive proposition for starting the business online without any sales commissions, without any listing and subscription fees. But what we also did, we also wanted to make sure that the buyers, especially the ones that are relatively new to online shopping, can easily find their ways. So we provided, for example, a lot of free deliveries to those customers. So I think in general, the marketplace is one of the great ways where there is already a lot of traffic, buyers which are really focused on buying, not only viewing, and I can encourage every retailer to use marketplace. And if Poland with over almost 40 million customers is the market for you, Allegro is the place to be.
Okay, and Nicholas, as a retailer involved with all that's been going on at the moment, have you found that the key way for you to get more cut through is to have your products in more places that consumers are hanging out?
I think it's a very good question to which you can't give a general answer. I think every brand and every product probably must have its own strategy, right? So if I think about ourselves, we originally, even before we started to build our own web shop, we had a pure indirect sales strategy. So we had independent retailer the traditional brick and mortar world to distribute our product. And then came the big online retailers like the Zalandos and so on. So we continued to work with them. And then finally, we built our direct-to-consumer business because we felt like it would be super important to have the direct interaction with the consumer to keep the pulse of what they're asking for, and also to be able to have a much wider range of products because we didn't want to depend on our retail clients to place orders. So in order to grow, we need to have our own online store because consumers now they become smarter, so they compare prices, they compare products. So I think in our case, this dual strategy, having indirect distribution and direct distribution, worked out very well. It might not be the case for everyone. And then in addition, you have the marketplaces, right? The marketplaces here, there is a wide range of marketplaces that can help you to accomplish different targets. One is clearly geographical expansion. As Kasper just said, we work with Allegro because the Polish market for us is interesting. It is an easy way to get into to see is there demand, but we can't really expect from those marketplaces to develop the market fully for us, right? It's just the first step to get into the market, and then we build our own strategy about how do we get further, right? Do we have to have our own online shop for Poland, for instance? And then other marketplaces can be used more for, selling, whatever you have left in inventory, right? I mean, thinking about eBay or Amazon, right? You can put all the long tail into that, which, helps you to clear your stock. So there can be different objectives. There can be different, things you can do with marketplaces. But ultimately, I think the branding and the brand building and the brand management needs to rely with the brand. You can't really delegate this to any marketplace. So this is just a sales channel. It's not a branding channel, if you ask me, if I say it bluntly.
And I like bluntness. Always a fan of straightforward, blunt answers. So, Roger, in your perspective, would you see, as Nicholas just said, the world of marketplaces being more about performance than they are necessarily about brand?
Yes, I'm with Nicholas on that. But I also think that when there's more choice in every category and more brands and people are online, it's vital to harness the priming effects of branding and to really build your brand so you become top of mind. Because I think when there's so much traffic online and so much supply and demand, it's really important to, on the one hand side, and I'm with Byron Sharp on that one, to become physically available and transfer to the online world. Maybe that is a Google Shopping ad, for instance. And on the other hand, you also need to make sure that the mental availability is also strong, so that when people come into the market, they will also start looking for your brand, or if you're a marketplace or retailer, they will start their journey at your site.
Yeah, it's that there's so much we now have to consider as retailers as we're trying to work out those different marketing strategies and where we're going to put our effort at the moment. And it almost feels like the surge in orders many are seeing almost makes it more difficult to work out what to do because there's so many different opportunities out there. So do any of you have any advice on, for anyone who's listening who's going, well, we could expand our brand awareness, we could invest in the straight performance marketing. Where would you start? Anyone want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, maybe that's one for me as well. Because I think it's not a question of brand or performance. It's always both. There's this nice term, I think Mark Ritson coined it, called bothism. So it's not black or white. So I think these two need to be combined in a very clever way. And of course, it always depends on where you stand as a brand, or what goods or in which category you're in. But in any case, one can't do without the other. So for me, it's really important to point out that it's not a question of investing in performance or brand, but it should always be a clever combination of both.
I would totally sign this because I mean we've tested marketplaces, and we continue to test and develop marketplace, and we've actually went away from some because we figured out that there was no performance. So it still costs you time and management effort to keep all those marketplaces up and running and to put the right products there. So I think the danger is now, because there are really many marketplaces developing. It's kind of like the thing probably of the last 2 years and the coming years, is that you if you do only marketplaces, then you end up putting your products everywhere, but only half of them really are relevant. So as Roger said, I think you need to, I mean, in our case, I mean, we need to have a fashionable marketplace. We need to have the right target audience, and we need to generate some sales. Otherwise, even just showing your products, if nobody buys them, there's no point. I mean, there's even no branding effect, right? So it's important to have both. I mean, the fit of the brand with the target audience, and then of course performance.
So in this world of bothism, I'm gonna steal that from you, Roger. I like that. In this world of bothism, where we've got to be doing both the brand and the performance, is there a single marketing channel, a single route to market, where we might only consider one of brand or performance, or are they both in everything we do you think? Roger, you started us off down the path of bothism, so I'm going to come to you on that one.
Okay, yes. The thing in marketing is there's so often that one answer called "it depends," and this is also the case here, because I think every brand or retailer will have their own experiences with marketing channels, but I think, generally speaking, if you want to build the brand, there's still TV, which is a major channel, and it's so important to have in your mix, and it's still driving results. But when it comes to performance channels, there's so many that you can't really point out that one channel at least in our case. So there's display marketing, there's affiliate, there's search, there's social. So there are so many channels. It's impossible for me to point out that one channel.
Yeah, I think if you consider that very very rarely the purchase happens on the first point of contact, right, with your audience. There's a whole user journey that you have to follow, right? And some channels have much more of a branding effect, but don't convert very well. But if you keep them out of your marketing mix, then you will have less conversions right at the end. So I mean, again, like it or not, look at Google AdWords. It's still one of the best performing or converting channels, but it converts after people went through other touch points, right? I mean, they might have discovered you on Instagram or anywhere else, and then they remember you, and then they come through AdWords, right? So they're all, I mean, you have to consider the whole user journey and have a mix, and can try to build attribution models where you try to allocate parts of your sale to those branding channels, but it's just mathematical models. So I think it comes down to trial and error at the end to find the right mix.
I like that point about it's not necessarily we may be running our Google ads in order purely to drive performance, but if we don't have the branding happening somewhere else, then we're not going to get the sales, and therefore the two have to be combined. But we should be thinking about where that user journey point is, and is it more about make them know about us, make them love us, make them want to come find us when they want to buy, or is it more about mopping up the sales when we get there? Kasper, from the perspective, you're kind of a marketplace representative here, par excellence, and would you say that the role of the marketplace is more one about branding, or is it just pure performance in that overall customer journey mix we're talking about?
Sure. So our perspective, I think, as a marketplace might be a bit unique, because actually, if you think about in Poland, the shoppers in Poland, Allegro is the first place where they start shopping in the internet. So even in terms of search, they start on Allegro versus somewhere else in the internet. So from this perspective, I think we have this unique position where different brands and retailers, they can actually combine the performance marketing, but also branding activities. So obviously, like in search, Allegro, similarly to Google, for example, we have performance marketing solutions where retailers can be really focused on driving sales of specific assortment. But what we are also developing is a suite of different tools for branding, and this can start from general campaigns that we have from branded stores on Allegro, from special brand zones where customers can actually get a special brands. But we are also working with some of the brands in developing, let's say, a wider perspective where they can focus on Allegro, but also outside of Allegro in a one, let's say, comprehensive campaign, including, for example, also influencers on Instagram or YouTube. So I think there are also branding opportunities on marketplaces. At least this is something that we are working on with our partners on Allegro. So I think it could be combined.
I guess it depends on the marketplace and what their role is. There's not a lot of branding potential on Amazon, but there is on a platform such as Allegro. Nicholas, you mentioned earlier about how you pick which marketplaces and you get rid of some and you keep some. Is the ability to control your brand and to promote your brand on those platforms a part that comes into your decision-making process of which marketplaces to be using?
Well, honestly, the decision to maybe leave a marketplace is mainly performance-based. So there's not much of a branding effect, right? I mean, there are a couple of marketplaces that we left, not so many, I must say, but some where we didn't have any. We didn't have any sale, or so few sale that it wasn't really interesting and not worth the effort, and we couldn't see it developing. And the other we left was because the economical model was a little bit complicated. It was kind of like a selling club, and then we needed to have discounts all the time, and the commission was quite high. So we figured out that at the end we could sell, but economically it doesn't make sense. So we still consider performance in a sense like the volume we sell, but also of course the margin that's left at the end, because you can compare the marketplace commission, of course, with your own marketing campaigns. So this is the benchmark, right? You can compare marketplaces amongst each other and figure out, okay, which one is the most interesting one in terms of commissions, in terms of costs, and so on. But you can also compare to your own campaigns and then figure out, okay, if I put more into my own marketing and drive more people to my own store, how much would it cost me, right? And how big is the effort? So those are all things we take into consideration. Branding is less of a point for those decisions. But of course, branding is important before we start working with the marketplace, right? If we don't have a match, then we probably wouldn't even start working with the marketplace.
Yeah, you've got to. It strikes me that kind of what we're vaguely coming down to, and I'm not going to give any conclusions yet. We're still debating, but it seems like we're talking that marketplaces will drive the performance, but you've got to be doing the work to build that brand awareness, to drive people to want to find you when they get to the marketplace. Roger, is that something you've seen with what you've been doing at Otto as well?
Yeah, I think also as a marketplace or as a retailer, you also need to drive branding and become top of mind for people, so that, like Kasper said, people start their journey at your site. So this is also a question of whether you've built a strong brand and you made people aware and keep them aware of your offering. So this is also very important for us at Otto. Because of course there's a competitive landscape with other large marketplaces and retailers, and we want to secure our share of traffic and of business, of course. So this is why branding is very much important too, and also because Otto is currently in the transformation phase of retailer becoming a marketplace. So this is why all of a sudden you have like two target groups. On the one hand side, it's partners and retailers or brands aiming to sell at your marketplace, and on the other hand, it's consumers. So you need to be attractive to both. So as a marketplace, I think it's also one major job to drive traffic to your platform in order for everyone else selling on your marketplace being able to exploit that.
Yeah, so there's both the brand awareness of the marketplace and the brand awareness of the products available on the marketplace. I'm seeing lots of nodding heads. Did any of you want to add anything there before I move us on to the next bit? No? Okay, cool. Like it. You're just agreeing with what I'm saying, which is even better. Hopefully all you guys out there are enjoying this too. If you do have questions you would like to ask following this, then head over to the Allegro virtual stand where you can book a one-to-one meeting to go through more questions in this marketing brand marketplace arena. But what I feel like we've been talking a lot about the performance side of it whilst referencing the brand. So I want to ask you guys, each of you, what for you is the best channel for building that brand awareness that then drives the trickle down of customers to your own store, to the marketplaces, to physical retail? And with your wide plethora of experience in industries, both e-commerce and beyond, I'm going to come to you first for this one, Roger.
Yeah, well, it depends. But I think it's for us because we have a really large target group. So basically everyone 18 years and up is a potential customer for Otto. So what we have to do is we have to continuously reach the entire market. According to that, we need to pick our channels that enable us to do that. And it's very much traditional media on the one hand side. So it's TV, it's out-of-home advertising, it's also radio. But of course, all social media platforms now play a really important role too. So just channels like Facebook, Instagram, but also Pinterest. All these channels are really important for us too when it comes to building our brand and to generating that awareness that we need and that we later on exploit with our performance marketing practices.
I like this. We've got the huge channels, the huge brand awareness pieces, but then we've got the more kind of tactical, shorter term marketing around the social media. Nicholas, what for you is the number one channel for building that brand awareness?
Yeah, so when we started a few years ago, we were pretty much performance based, and we did AdWords stuff to generate first sale and to grow and to reach the first level until we realized that it would become more and more complicated to grow. It's AdWords prices are going up. It's very competitive. So what we build our brand building on is maybe this might surprise you, but it's a lot on our customers, our customer base. We try to provide some product experience. We try to create great content, share it with our customers, have our customers share it, and instead of we don't have the resources to do it TV, and I don't even think that this is the right media for us. So we really, more on the grassroots, and we're trying to really work bottom up. And it might be also because of our product, which is somehow special. It's very fashionable. It's kind of like unique. It attracts people, and many people are really happy, right? There's kind of this wow effect when they unbox the product, and we base it on that. We hope that the word of mouth and of course we help our customers and loyalty programs to spread the word. So a lot of branding is happening through that. It's clearly not enough, and we clearly want to go further into this direction. This is one of the keywords I picked for 2021 is product experience, because I really want the product experience to be unique, people to remember our brand and to share it with their friends and colleagues and family and so on. So that's the way we build brand. We think that our clients are the best advocates.
Love it. I love that as an answer, and we're going to come back to that shortly. But I really should give Kasper the chance to answer this question before we dive deeper into what brand actually is. So Kasper, for you, what's the number one way of building brand at the moment?
So I think coming back to what Roger said, it's I think similar for Allegro that our target group is pretty much the entire adult population of Poland. And we want to maintain this position as a top of mind destination for shopping. So we are experimenting with different and using different types of channels. Obviously traditional, but I think especially for the younger viewers, the social media, but also YouTube, and I think cooperation with different types of influencers, where this branding is, I would say, more subtle in terms of the messaging. I think these are some of the ways how we are doing it. I think one of the most famous in Poland, but one of the most famous, let's say, ways where Allegro brand really became, let's say, like the household name, was when we produced or co-produced like a short movies with one of the Oscar-winning 3D graphics, and published it on YouTube. So for us, this was one of the best ways to build our brand here. I would say not very conventional, but in our situation, it was the way to reach, let's say, the widest possible target group. But obviously, as it was already said here, this should be and is combined with the performance side of the marketing. So
yeah, you can't separate them, can you? they're so intrinsic. It's so intrinsically linked. But what I wanted to drill down was what Nicholas was saying there around, because it strikes me, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, how do we brand a business? Many e-commerce D2C businesses wouldn't even be considering brand as something they spent much time talking about after they created a logo. Then we kind of got to the point where people would go, we do TV ads, we do magazine ads, really big, expensive marketing pieces. And now we've reached the point where actually it's become as simple, and small isn't quite the right word for it, but it's become as easy to access, I suppose, as a marketing channel, as a YouTube video, as social media, or even, as Nicholas was saying, it's all about the product, which makes me think maybe does the power of our brand start from the product itself and the customer experience we give, and then everything else builds out on top of that. Obviously, Nicholas, was your point first off, but Roger, Kasper, do either of you have anything you would you agree that brand starts with the product?
Yeah, I mean, Otto has a 70-year history, so it's really a heritage brand. Yeah, I think I would agree with that, because at some point every brand started off, and probably the product experience became the driving force for building that brand. But I think at one point it certainly is not enough to only rely on that, because you just need to acquire new customers constantly, and you can't really rely on that alone, I think.
Yeah, we unfortunately we don't all have the amazing heritage brand that is Otto. If only we did. Kasper, is that something you see on Allegro? You see brands performing well because they've got that great product and that great customer service element going on?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I think there are two sides of it. So one is for us as Allegro, we are obviously, we rely on let's say our heritage, which is not 70 years, it's 20 years, but the product experiences and the customer experience. So the best selection possible for the buyers, the best prices. This is something that is this is inherent to our brand in the eyes of our buyers. But I think in terms of the most successful brands on Allegro, I think we see similar things, right? So even the experience that they get when they decide to shop from a certain brand. There are, let's say, different ways how brands can like show their assortment on Allegro with dedicated shops, and the customer experience. I think, especially the post-sales one, this is also something that is, I think, driving this, let's say, sustainable growth of the business, because eventually, especially on the marketplace, the buyers, they have an opportunity to share their feedback, share their experience with certain sellers, and the other buyers are relying on that because these are just different buyers. And I think this word of mouth, this often is a better, let's say, investment than some of the paid channels, because eventually, if people see thousands of happy customers and on the marketplace they can see it easily, they are immediately attracted to this specific retailer. So I think it's very important both for the marketplace, but also for the buyers, for the sellers on the marketplace to focus on that experience.
Yeah, and Nicholas, I'm going to come to you next because this part of the discussion started with you and the work you've been doing on getting that product experience right in order to build the brand from the ground up. So as someone who's doing this day in, day out, for those who are listening, who are watching, in fact, who are thinking, yes, that's what we should be doing. We should be improving our product experience. Have you got any tips for them on some good ways to go about doing so?
I wish I had. Unfortunately, it all starts with the consumer and your target audience, and what we've seen over the past, and there's some acceleration taking place, is that it becomes more and more unpredictable, right? I mean, on one side you can see consumers running crazy about cheap stuff that they can buy on Wish, right? So they pay $10 for something they don't actually need, but they wait 3 weeks for it to be delivered, and it comes right from China. And the next day they ask you if your products are sustainable, right? And what you're doing for the environment and stuff like this, right? So it doesn't fit together, right? So, so we, I mean, in our case, we're not on Wish. We are sustainable, and we try to make a story, and we try to go much further into the storytelling, trying to pick, the topics and the content that interests the consumer, trying to listen to them. But it's really hard because it's moving so fast, right? I mean, take TikTok, right, as another example. When TikTok started, we looked into this and we said, I looked into this and said, well, what the hell should I do with TikTok, right? I mean, it's kind of like 12-year-old girls dancing, I mean, and now you look at TikTok, I mean, it's full of brands, right? So, so there is, I think I don't have a clear tip besides being, trying to follow the trends, try and error is probably what could work. Some things just don't work, and give up if you feel like just place bets, right? If your bet doesn't work, give up and try the next bet until something works, and then build on this. I mean, this is what we're trying to do. Is this the right approach? I honestly have no idea. But the world is so fast moving that you have to be just constantly listening and watching what's happening.
Yeah, it is moving so fast at the moment, and yeah, TikTok, I think it was 12 months ago, I think I was sat doing a panel in a real world event like this, and I had no idea what TikTok was because I don't have children. Turned around and asked the audience, and everyone knew, and I was like, okay, I need to upskill on this one. So there's that, but that's the thing, isn't it? In this industry, there's always something new coming on, and with the rate of change we've seen this year in consumer behavior and how that's differed from country to country, from consumer group to consumer group, from product category to product category, I think it's going to continue to be very interesting as we continue on. But I wanted to touch on something else you mentioned there, Nicholas, which was storytelling, which is something I've been hearing a lot more about in the world of branding, and about almost actually even in the world of performance marketing as well. And just to be clear what I mean by storytelling, I'm talking about when you talk about it, like the problem the product solves, and then you show how the product solves the problem, or you talk about the founder story and the origin story of the business and the products. And I would say this is both a branding and a performance method, because some of the most powerful Facebook ads you see out there are brand storytelling videos, or they are long copy that tell the story and tell that problem story. That's what I'm seeing. Guys, is this what you're seeing as well? Is that increasing amount of story / brand being bought into even performance marketing? Nicholas, you're nodding there. Did you want to come in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a brand, that's, I think it's your duty actually to tell the story, right? I mean, I mean, there are different types of brands, of course. I mean, you can build a brand just to sell on Amazon, right? If you only if your only interest is to be part of to take part of let's say the marketplace hype, and I just mentioned Amazon because I don't think that's the case for Allegro nor Otto nor those big ones, but then you can build a brand and only focus on selling there, and then you don't need to have a big story. You just need to sell at the right price, right, and do the Amazon advertising, and all works fine. However, if you have a brand that exists in the real world and not only on Amazon, then I think storytelling is something that's really your duty, right? And as you just mentioned, Chloe, the founder story is something that every brand should have. Let's say the inside view, right? I mean, how do we do? How and why do we do this, right? What is our mission? I mean, this, of course, is very important. Then these days, sustainability is one of the key topics, definitely. And also, as Roger said, I think, or Kasper, sorry, I don't remember, but the after sale experience also is very important, right? I mean, just to lock in your customers, just ask them, okay, what is your experience? I mean, do you want to share with us what you do with the product, how you like our shoes, did people talk to you on the street? Because that happens to our customers a lot, that people ask, hey, where is this from and what brand is this, and so on. So just involving customers post-purchase also is very important. And this builds a story, which I think is important for every brand.
I like that you bring it back to the post-purchase piece there, because I think that's what stops a lot of brands from putting their founder story, their vision, their mission out there, is because they know that their back-end systems are not living up to what they actually want to deliver. So I think that's often what stops people from doing it. But we're getting slightly low on time here, and I wanted to ask a specific question as our last one. But Roger, Kasper, did either of you want to jump in? Do you have any quick points around the storytelling tips or tricks for anyone out there?
Yeah, maybe just a quick one. I think I would like to share some of the insights that both Les Binet and Peter Field from the UK have found out when researching, I think, thousands of FE cases in the UK. And what they found out is that the more rational the decision-making in a category is, the more important emotional advertising becomes. And that's storytelling for me. So that's quite interesting because, of course, main drivers are price, assortment, availability, shipping time, and cost. But that's not enough. There's more to it. So, and the more rational, and it's when people compare prices, that's quite a high involvement journey, I would say. But then the more important, storytelling becomes.
Excellent. Okay, cool. I like that. I like that extra bit of insight. Right, we're very low on time, so I'm going to go to my final question, which is I'm going to ask each of you to give a quick answer for the audience, as we are now on the cusp of the biggest selling period probably in the history of the world in the e-commerce space. The predictions are crazy for what's coming up this Q4. Have you got one nugget of marketing growth sanity advice, maybe, for those out there watching who are about to be dealing with peak Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas 2020? If we come to Kasper first for this one.
Mm-hmm. So I think probably the key advice would be to think how to stand out on different markets, and be sure to have a a clear strategy on how on different markets you can really get the attention of the customers. That would be probably the key advice.
Perfect. Love it. And another quick answer from Roger.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is that customer journeys have changed quite a lot in 2020, and they will continue to do so. And I think it's really quintessential to understand these journeys and allocate spend accordingly and be very flexible and agile.
Excellent. And finally, Nicholas.
Yeah, I have not much to add. I think it's absolutely, I would sign both of the statements. I mean, you have to be prepared for a big end of the year. What we see is, of course, it's driven by inventory. So we're not short on inventory for now. So we kept producing and are happy to have products despite the COVID crisis. So that's the number one. And then, it's going to be a crazy end of the year. It's going to be very different than the years before. I don't know, but I mean, as As we just heard, I think the consumer behavior has changed, and so has your marketing to change as well, right? So no specific tips for the end of the year. Just be ready and try to anticipate.
I like it. I think that counts as a tip for me. Be ready and try to anticipate. I think that counts. Well, look, thank you so much for tuning in, all of you, to our roundtable session. If you have any questions arising from this, then do make sure you book yourself a one-to-one meeting by heading to the Allegro virtual stand, because they're there, ready, willing, and able to help you. Huge thank you to Roger, Nicholas, and Casper for being awesome guests in this roundtable and for providing so many great tips and pieces of advice. It's much appreciated. And thank you all for tuning in. I cannot believe how many different countries you're all coming from. So it's been an absolute pleasure to help you all out. And thank you in particular to those of you who are tuning in at very strange times of the day. We really do appreciate you tuning in and joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of Lengow Day 2020. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Roger.
Thanks.
And Casper.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas, Casper, Roger, and Chloe for this marketing-related talk. Very interesting views on branding and performance. Oui, bonjour, enchanté. Alors, je vous appelle. Hola, gracias por devolverme la llamada. Freut mich, dass ich Sie endlich am Telefon habe. Like every cosmopolitan modern office worker, I'm both a multitasker and multilingual. I work really hard. The aim of the company is to go international and to win international markets. That's why the next conference is about how to conquer international markets with your SEO and SEA strategies.
Right. Well, thank you very much for the awesome introduction, Sophie. So I appreciate that. Some really nice words about us in the clan. All right. So this is going to be completely unscripted. I don't have any preset questions. I just want a real intelligent, raw conversation about the world of e-commerce and SEO. So without further ado, on my screen, I have Adrian. Right. Where's my... Okay. So Adrian's up here for me, like there. So Adrian, introduce yourself, my man.
Okay, so I'm Adrian Menard. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Botify. Botify being an organic search marketing platform. So basically, we help large retail websites to increase their traffic and revenue from Google organic results. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. If anyone's wondering why the screen might be a little bit pixelated for Adrian, we're going to put it down to the fact that Botify is doing loads of cool stuff in the background, and that's why. And that's cool. Excuse me. We can live with that. Aleida, hey, how's it going? It's been a while.
Luke,
yes.
How are you?
I'm really good. How are you? Introduce yourself.
I am an SEO consultant and founder. I have a boutique SEO consultancy called Untitled, and a good share of my clients are websites that not only target international markets, but are also e-commerce driven, transactional websites, a lot of marketplaces, international marketplaces. And so I'm very looking forward to share with you today.
Awesome. Great news. And last but not least, Mr. South of France. G, how's it going? Whereabouts are you? Tell me about yourself.
Well, yeah, for sure, Luke. So I'm Guillaume Caban. Everybody calls me G. Too complicated name. And I'm a growth advisor to mostly MarTech startups, B2B SaaS businesses. And today I'm going to be representing one of those, which is Gorgias, which is one of the top e-commerce help desks in the world. And with a couple of thousand of clients, we have a pretty good perspective on what happened in 2020 and how e-commerce merchants are preparing for the months to come.
Fantastic. I love that. And last but not least, for anyone who's wondering what the heck I'm doing here, my name is Luke Carthy, and I am also in the world of growth like G, but I specialize in I growth in that capacity. So G, I'm going to use your image behind you as a wallpaper as a perfect example to kick off some conversation. So I think anyone, unless you've been living under a rock or you're off the grid, that is a very clear trajectory for e-commerce growth over the last 6-ish months, right? Since COVID really kicked off. Exactly. G has got it going on. So
Luke, where are we right now? Are we here? Or are we here? Or are we here?
I reckon we're
Are we flattening or are we about to grow?
Yeah. I reckon we're still growing. We're not done yet. We're still growing. But a question I'd just love to put out there to kind of get things started is, what has been your first-hand experience of, we'll call it the e-commerce re-revolution, if you like, since COVID? What things have you really seen that have accelerated and gone completely off the scale in your own, perspective? So we'll keep the order the same. Adrian, I'll let you kick it off, my man.
Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you. So I would say two major things. First, the search intents dramatically changed overnight. That was incredible, to look at how quickly the user behavior, the user search intents change. And the one thing that really fascinated me, because we are lucky enough to have global retail customers over the world, so we can access to their queries for every market. And so it all started, as we know, with APAC, and then it moved to Europe, and finally to North America. I thought it was very, very interesting to see how quickly everybody changed the way we were purchasing online. The second thing is more on the retail side. I was amazed by the flexibility and the reactivity of our customers, on how quickly they adopted to this new search intent from their customers, and how quickly they adopted some automation features that we can have on with our product.
Okay, awesome. I love that. I love that. I think that's brilliant. I think one perfect example of exactly that kind of quick, immediate change is what Heinz did. I'm not too sure if it's a global site or one that's just for the UK, but Heinz knocked up a real quick e-commerce site on Shopify, and literally within a couple of weeks was selling direct to consumer. And that is, I guess, a perfect example of exactly what you're talking about. So brilliant. I'll extend the conversation and the question out to yourself later. So what have you seen in that same space of growth?
I am going to take one of the comments from Adrian before, because I this is very aligned to what I have seen, of course, especially for e-commerce websites or marketplaces that all of a sudden started to sell masks, right? Because supply and demand, right? Marketplaces that were this. It was not even a category before, right? Or it was like a third level facet. And nowadays it's one of the top categories, driving much more conversions, right? So I have been able to see how proactive across many verticals websites have been to identify new consumer type of behavior, to identify and enable also and different areas of their website in order to be there to make those levels or areas of the website rankable and attract and be able to profit and leverage that opportunity right there. On the other hand, also many players who I will say didn't consider necessarily before international markets have started to also to take those markets much more into consideration when they have realized that many of the new orders, the new behavior, the new intent is coming from abroad, right? And they do have the capacity to generate non-trivial share of sales, right? So I have seen many clients wanting to start targeting many more European markets, wanted to also start trying much more a few Latin American markets too, even emerging markets too. So it has been quite fun to see the type of reaction on leveraging new opportunities on one hand, and then also be there for their customers. I have also seen a lot of e-commerce websites start to considering and investing much more in informational content, in FAQs, in Q&As, especially with new customers that they all of a sudden had that were not necessarily used to the way of how they work, right? And to be there to connect with their customers in many other ways than just the transactional approach too.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, and I can resonate that 150%. That's brilliant. I think what's amazing is as SEOs and as content marketers and as industry leaders, this is the sort of stuff we dream of. We ask for it all the time. Content strategy, proper funnel assessment, a whole, growth funnel from discovery right the way through to purchase. And then all of a sudden COVID happened, which of course is a bit of well, not a bit, it's a major disaster. But there is definitely some good things that we've seen out of it in terms of companies being forced to invest money into e-commerce because there's no other, sales channels. So yeah, that's a brilliant bit of insight there. So G, over to yourself. I always say the name G now with such vigor and intent in my voice, so I'm loving the name. But yeah, tell me what you. It works. It works. What have you seen?
Good marketing.
What's going on?
So we've got just like a couple of thousands of merchant brands, and added on top of that many thousand more since the beginning of COVID. And there's a couple of large market moves that I saw that are interesting if you take a step back and you're a bit macro. One obviously is that there's a lot of people who unfortunately got laid off, and a non-significant portion of those actually started some e-commerce sites as a source of revenue. And we saw a lot of those people simply go to Shopify and other of those easy to build e-commerce website platforms and just start a business. And some of those are working out. Great for them. That's also creating increased competition in the categories they're entering. And those people have, a lot of energy, and so they're creating a lot of content. So that's one interesting market move. And the second interesting market move I saw is the penetration of e-commerce, especially in the US, which has increased in a way that we hadn't seen before. E-commerce was, I'd say, increasing its share of market penetration of a couple of percent per year, depending on the category. It's a slow migration. And you can see some categories which had, capped out, like books, for example, right? People who want to buy books online have, and those who don't want, don't, right? And with the lockdown, that has changed a lot. And so now a lot of people who didn't want to buy online have been forced to buy online, and some of them liked that experience. And that has been a unique opportunity for brands to create a brand affinity loyalty with those new customers and consumers in a way that they would never have been able to reach those people. And so there's, again, if we take the SEO angle, there's interesting, I'd say, the smart brands, the smart merchants have created tailored content to cater to those new populations. And so for me, the keyword here in both cases is speed. The people I have seen succeed were those who saw those market moves early, and early in March said, yes, let's go create content for those new populations. Let's go create this new market segment. Let's go after that. And they were the first ones to market, and they were able to capture all those searches, and they got the revenue. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. It all rings true, and it's all really positive news, which is good. Starting the conversation on a positive win, but to kind of change the tone of the conversation a little bit. We all know that COVID and everything else, with good, there's bad, there's yin and there's yang, right? So what kind of things have you seen, again, in the e-commerce space across this year that haven't been so great? Where have you seen challenges and pain points and friction and downturns? Let's talk about some of the raw stuff that maybe some of the listeners can tap into and take some advice from. So again, with yourself, Adrian, we'll start from the top.
So I'm thinking about the travel industry, of course. So once again, the users' behavior changed because they were not actively looking for new travels, but they were actually looking for being reimbursed of the travel they already paid. And I thought it was, so I'm traveling all the time. I love visiting new countries. And for me, seeing an industry like the one, like this one, impacted this way was really something that I didn't like. So it looks like it's getting better. It's not going back to normal, of course, and I'm not even sure it's gonna back to normal in the next 6 months. But yes, this is definitely something that I'm going to remember, and I'm thinking about all my customers because they represent maybe 20% of the revenue. So we made everything possible to adapt our commercial strategy and relationship with them to make sure that they can go through the storm.
I like that. Yeah, travel is definitely a big pain point. So Aleda, you're nodding in huge agreement right now. So I'm going to let you go. Let me hear what you got to say.
Yes, indeed. I agree that, for example, indeed, we don't think of travel as e-commerce, but it's very transactional driven. Yes, and the huge aggregators, marketplaces, etc. And I have to say, the purely e-commerce type of clients that I work with, thankfully, they haven't been necessarily negatively affected. Of course, they may have had a few extra challenges than before. So, for example, with inventory, right, that has been a little bit more chaotic and different than before. So in some cases, I have seen marketplaces finally willing to shift the way they handle product pages, product URLs, because if you start selling masks, they will be gone like in 5 seconds. So stop completely indexing those URLs, and at some point aggregating them in a aggregator product type that they enable even for that, right? For that crazy, always changing inventory. That was mind blowing to see. But not necessarily that bad, because yes, they have been in the good side of those industries that have been benefited in general by this craziness. On the other hand, yes, with cruise lines, oh my God, transportation platforms like, for example, car rental alternatives, car rental alternates. So, for example, they were highly hit at the start, but these have been, for example, it has been not necessarily as damaged or negatively hit as others. So, for example, I have seen already that they started to grow again at the end of May, beginning of June. In July, they were already pre-COVID levels, more or less. So we can see that there are different levels of those type of transactional companies that have been hit. I have to say, though, that the e-commerce ones that, thankfully, that I am working with have been in the good side of the street, though. Yeah.
That's good news. That's good news for everybody, right? Good news for you, good news for your clients and everything else. So that's great. But yeah, travel definitely been hit hard in a number of ways. And I love the fact that you bring up car hire as well and vehicle hire, because I remember, I don't know if this was specific again to the UK or a global issue, but when it was, I've never seen this before in my life, and I don't think I'll ever see it again, is when oil got so low in cost that it was actually the oil refineries were actually in debt. They wanted to give oil back to make their money, which was just unreal. It just really shows, obviously e-commerce, getting things delivered to your door, people not traveling, and how it all connects together, right? Less travel means more e-commerce, and maybe in the future, maybe there's some real clever data analysts, maybe guys at BuyFi can almost track oil price and see if there's an increase in e-commerce demand as a result, right? Because the two are kind of interlinked, transport and but anyway, I'm going off on a completely different tangent here. So if anyone's in the modern data, maybe take a look at that. Last but not least, again, G, what are you seeing? What are the negative things that you're seeing impacted right now?
Yeah. Not just negative, but it's challenging for sure, has been how merchants are able to find customers, new customers. I was talking earlier of increased competition, and that's definitely something I've been seeing this year. The number of channels that are available to find customers has been reduced, depending on what was your distribution method. But if you think of some retailers had, a mix of online and offline channels. Some of them find customers at, in-person exhibits, showrooms, and stuff like that, and then the sales move online. Well, that no longer happens nowadays, right? The second thing is that we saw on the paid side, on the CPC side, we saw significant, let's say, drop in CPCs in March as everybody pulled back to oh, wait, what's happening? Let's stop investments. And then they skyrocketed back, right, in May and June, as everybody just moved massively their offline budget to online. And this is, again, I used to be in San Francisco up to recently, this is not going to be improved by the American election, moving online to Facebook and those budgets going. And so what's going to happen is that you have, at say, Facebook becoming extremely costly because everybody's moving the budgets there, and the number of consumers hasn't changed, right? So you're just bidding on the same people. And so you just have a few channels. And so that is, I think, the challenge that we're looking at solving is how do you connect with current and future customers in a world where like you only have online, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Actually, I kind of want to give a shout out to a gentleman called Arnout Helmans. And the reason why I say that is because he put out a tweet earlier this week, I think, or last week, about how we are underinvesting in Bing ads because people are at home and people have their work computers, and a lot of work computers are defaulted to Bing search engine. And just again, sensing out opportunities and using behaviors and kind of understanding where your customers really are at and adapting platforms. I think as SEOs, myself included, I'm mad guilty for this, is just simply focusing on the 90%, right? Focusing on the Google market share and forgetting about everybody else. I mean, is Ask Jeeves still a thing? I don't know. But you know, you hear my point. So awesome. Let's move on the conversation. So I guess with the world of e-com, the way it's going and everything growing at 100 miles an hour, and it doesn't look like it's going to be slowing down anytime soon. You know, it could be an intimidating space to get into for small businesses, for startups, for that kind of institution and setup. So, what kind of piece of advice would you give to a startup who maybe is within their first 12 months of trading online? How can they go toe to toe with some of the big players in this space? So, we'll turn it around this time. G, I'm going to start with you.
What kind of startup? A e-commerce merchant or an e-commerce martech?
All right, let's have both. Let's have both. I would say I was thinking merchant specifically, but if you got something else for martech, let's hear it.
Yeah, so on the merchant side, I'd say there are a lot of sub-market niches that are appearing more and more these days within the populations, and so being able to be really good on a small niche and finding this like what we call like the product to channel fit. You know, we often in the martech side, we often in the B2B SaaS where I live, we talk like the product market fit. You know, is there a fit for your product, right? And what's interesting is that we now have defined like this like kind of circle or quadrant where we think there is actually a fit between your product, you know, and the specific channel, and you know your product and let's say the specific type of consumer. So it's not who you sell to, it's like where are those people and can those people be sold to on this channel? So maybe it's going to be like a let's say a subreddit. Maybe it's going to be some population on Quora. And there are many small populations that you can go after, and you got to really let's say nail it there first. The successes I've seen are merchants who are able to create a strong following in a specific category. And we're not going to talk about politics here, but I see in my merchants in the US people that have created brands that are associated with political parties that have made them successful. There's like Democratic and Republican coffee brands in the US, which just, as a Frenchman, just blows my mind because it's just coffee, but like it works, right? This is just one thing, it just works, right? And so that is smart, okay? That's just plain smart as a merchant who's trying to find a lower CAC and a better distribution method. And what we call like free acquisition, just to play back to a bit of SEO, right? If you're thinking of like long-term SEO, why we want SEO, it's because the CAC is controlled over time, right? It tends to zero at the infinite, right? And there's a few channels like that, like referral and advocacy and word of mouth, that if played well, have the same, I'd say, benefits. So that is what I'd recommend. Try to build a channel mix that is highly competitive on the CAC side. You do not want to compete with dollars on Facebook. That is a game you will lose. There's always going to be somebody with more dollars than you.
All right, I like that. So yeah, so I guess to reiterate that, if you're starting small, if you're new, if you've got a small budget to play with, then as you say, carve out a niche, find your richest, most engaged audience, and kind of build it from there. Yeah. Start small, think big. Love that. Really, really cool. So Aleda, let's have your advice in this space. So again, just to ask the question. So if you've got a business that's starting up within a year, what kind of advice would you give them to get off the ground?
Yes, I will say that I 100% agree with trying to diversify traffic channels. Of course, that is the healthy thing to do in any case. As an SEO myself, I have to agree, right? You cannot rely, unfortunately, on SEO at the start because it's long term. But because of this, I see too many websites when starting, because they acknowledge that, they are aware of that, they completely forget about SEO, and it's like they taxonomy, web structure, everything is a mess at the start, because they think it's like, oh, SEO won't pay off on the first months or even years, so I won't pay attention to that. And no, that is a big mistake, because otherwise later on they have all the popularity in the world, all of the authority, but they lack a proper structure, consistent facets, categorization that is able to rank for anything competitive, right? So and a terrible crawlability or indexability because of these issues. So I will say it's important that even if you won't be able to rely on organic search traffic in the first month, that you have a good base, you set a good base, starting, even I have to say, starting with the property, with the domain that you want to start with. I see many European players starting with a ccTLDs without realizing that they could sell abroad rather easily, right? And then they cannot do it if they have a ccTLD, and then they need to enable a new property for that. So it's a waste of effort. So when you start setting your base, start thinking on scalability, start thinking on where you even if you don't have certain category types or product types, how do you set your URL structure and your web structure and internal navigation to be ready for that in the future, to make it scalable on one hand. And then on the other hand, what I have to say, because you cannot think on harvest something that you haven't started to actually prepare way before, right? It's important that you do think on also top of the funnel type of search and searches, informational searches, which will be actually very important for you to establish authority as a brand and to get and increase your link popularity too. So investing a little bit on content marketing and on a good support section, Q&As, implementing structured data, making sure that you have your Google merchant feeds pretty well to leverage that additional visibility that, that nowadays you will be, maybe it's not so big still, but it's upcoming and getting more strength to provide organic visibility in the future too. So I will say, set a good base, structured data, good taxonomy, web architecture, and start investing on content, even if it won't pay off maybe in the first year, right? It is going to be there in the long run.
I love all of that, and this is how you know that. Yeah, I'm an SEO just like Aleda, right? Like, just so if I had a soundboard, I'd be like hitting all the keys for klaxons and stuff, because that's incredible. But yes, just to kind of reiterate exactly what Aleda said, it's like you need a foundation. You have to start somewhere. You don't have to be comprehensive from an SEO point of view. You haven't got to have all the answers, but yeah, absolutely, taxonomy needs to be the sweet spot. Your SEO foundation needs to be solid, because when you come back in a year or 2 years' time and you want to revisit that, and you've got more teams and you've got more complicated e-commerce CMS, it's a real pain to go back to the drawing board and rebuild that. It's a real pain. So yeah, really, really solid advice from Aleda just there. Awesome. Adrian, let's hear it, man. What advice have you got for starters, people setting up and getting out?
So I actually have an issue, because every time I have a tough question to answer, I'm thinking about what would Aleda answer. And she just exactly answered what I would have told everyone. So maybe one thing that is very important to remember is that your content, your website, and the technologies you're using are your assets for the long term. And at Botify, we are working with honestly the most powerful retail brands in the world. And even for those brands who are long established, successful websites, the SEO can represent between 15 and 45% of their traffic and revenue acquisition. So what does it mean? It really means that on the long term, if you don't have that, you are going to actually acquire your customers at a price that is probably too high. And I think this is what G was also describing. But a strong foundation of your organic marketing strategy in general will pay off on the mid and long term. And you know, with what we've seen over the past 6 months with this COVID-19 episode, honestly, so we have different bunch of customers, of course. We have customers who have a long time established organic strategy, and we have the others who tend to, let's say, accelerate their digital transformation. And of course, the winners are the ones who have started to invest heavily in their organic marketing strategy sooner than the others. So yes, in short, don't forget to invest heavily in content, in technologies, and in your websites, because these are your true assets for the long term.
Love all of that. This is gold. This is brilliant. Okay. So let's keep the conversation going. So I don't think we could ever talk about e-commerce, SEO, tech stack, channels, acquisition, marketing, retention, whatever you want to call it, without talking about the biggest and probably one of the earliest decisions that brands have to make in the world of e-com, which is, what platform do I go with? What platform do I choose? Now I know the kind of, there's the household brands, the big names out there. You've got your Shopify, your WooCommerce, your Magento, and then you've got some more sort of tangible ones, your Drupal Commerce and stuff like that. But I just kind of want to pique each of your brains and understand what your personal favorite is. And I know it's a real tough question. It's like trying to ask you to choose between children. But yeah, I'd love to try and get that information from you. So later, I'm going to start with you. What would be your chosen e-commerce CMS, and give me a reason as to why that is?
Yeah, well, as usual, as a good SEO, it depends, right? And I think that highly in this case, it depends on your capacity to do development, implementations, and changes, and fine tune or personalize whatever platform you choose, right? So if you are an enterprise level type of company already, or you expect to have like a good type of volume going on and do have technical support and development support, I will go, for example, with Magento, because even just with MagiWorks, the one of the most best known extensions right there, you can highly set and configure most of SEO, technical SEO type of configurations that will highly facilitate. And for the rest, you will have your technical support. On the other hand, if you don't have that type of capacity or budget to do all these changes, but at least have a little bit of technical capacity and a little bit of budget, I will go with WooCommerce. I am a WordPress fan, and also thinking about international, right? Like WPML, Polylang, they do have many different type of extensions, plugins, highly facilitating the whole configuration, one-click installs, etc. So, and give you a good bit of flexibility also in configuration. So that's good. I have to say though that I have seen the latest releases announcements from Shopify, for example, supporting multilingual type of configuration with one-click install, one-store install rather than many, right? So I am seeing that they are making the effort to make it much more straightforward without having to rely on third-party extensions, plugins, whatever. But still, I think that it has still, I would say, too many hassles right at the start, right? If you want to start straightforward, if you want to grow big internationally, right? Maybe this is not what you necessarily need or want. And if you don't have necessarily that type of requirement, it might be good if you're more local oriented, whatever. But if you want to really make the most out of the e-commerce possibilities, going international, global, the two other options, alternatives, I will say are my favorite ones.
Yeah, I love that rundown. I couldn't agree with you more on the WooCommerce side. I'm in a situation of building a brand right now myself, and WooCommerce is absolutely the platform and flavor of choice for all of the reasons and more that you just mentioned. So yeah, happy to hear that. So if anyone's listening, WooCommerce, startup, enterprise, Magento. All right, cool. So Mr. Botify, that's your nickname now. I'm so sorry, but I'd love to hear from someone who kind of crawls so many sites and sees so many tech stacks, and kind of has a really broad perspective of how the internet works, really, in the industry you're in. What's your favorite flavor of e-commerce CMS?
So honestly, it's a tough question because by definition, the customers we are working with most of the time are going to work with a very different platform, on very customized platform. So maybe two things that are going to complete what you just said. The first thing is that let's face the reality: the choice of a platform most of the time is business driven. Okay, they are not technology driven. So unfortunately, this is the reality of how large organization works. And honestly, I don't think it's gonna change. So maybe the second point is still you have to influence these choices. And I think one thing to consider is definitely the possibility to connect the platform with the other tools or the other third-party data that you want to use to run your strategy. And I think it's also the responsibility, of the vendor to build these partnerships. So, for example, at Botify, we just announced that we had now a strategic partnership with Salesforce Cloud Commerce. This is not the first one. This is not the last one. And we have a team dedicated to work on building those relationships, on building these connectors that are going to make the life of our clients easier. So I really recommend to take these partnerships into consideration when you are establishing an agreement with a platform.
Awesome. So I guess before we get to yourself, G, just want to give an opportunity to talk about the one-to-one live rooms that are going on with Botify at the moment. So if you want to pick their brains, get to know more about the tool, maybe ask them some questions about e-commerce and what platforms to choose, or maybe get a more rounded answer on some of the things we've spoken about today, then reach out, make sure you go check out their live rooms. So on to yourself, G. What's your favorite flavor of e-commerce CMS?
I'll tell you the how I pick first, and then I'll tell you the answer. The how I pick is doing migration is painful, so I want to avoid that. It's very costly. So I want to make a bet that is safe on the long term, and I'm thinking like 5 years horizon. Okay, and two, what can force me into migration? Migration can be caused by a platform no longer being supported, no longer being updated, or a small vendor being acquired and being integrated into a larger suite, which I don't want to be a part of. Which means I'm looking for a strong, solid, established company that has none of those risks from the business side. And from what I'm seeing, the best bet, if you want to minimize risk, is Shopify. So that's where I put my bets, and that's where I see most of the growth happening in the US market. Almost all of the growth, like SMB mid-market merchants, is in Shopify. The enterprise is in like Salesforce Commerce, for sure, the true enterprise, and all the rest is migrating to Shopify. Just the scale of the growth of Shopify in number of merchants, it's astounding, really astounding, right? Which is reflected in their market cap. But that's clearly, I'd say for me the safest choice if you want to avoid platform migration over the next 5, maybe 10 years.
That's a really cool way of looking at it, actually. I guess it really boils down to, again, it's a horrible phrase to use, and we overuse it in SEO all of the damn time, but it really does depend. But I think that the reason I wanted to ask that question is because there's never one solid answer. There's never one consistent answer. And we'd ask that question again in 6 months, maybe even sooner than that if a massive technological change happens, and our answers could be different. But I think it's just identifying what it is your business needs. I really like the way G approaches it in maybe looking at the way your business operates and understanding what your risks are and minimizing those and costs, and then taking a decision from there. I think Shopify has nailed it on the fact that they've offered a really low barrier of entry. It's almost like it's practically as easy as listing something on eBay for sale. And that to a lot of people is really sexy because you haven't got to think about the technology. And it's nice and simple.
I will just counterbalance what I said with something exactly almost the opposite, which is if you're starting an e-commerce store and you're thinking of your presence, you've got to differentiate. And there's two ways to differentiate. Either your product is differentiated or your marketing approach, which means in our day and age, the website is differentiated. right? Your distribution and marketing approach. Now, if you have a great differentiated product that is appealing to a customer base, then Shopify is great, right? Because it's a solid and you can't really go wrong, right? It's going to work. I mean, there's no doubt Shopify is going to work. Now, if you have a product that is not differentiated, that exists elsewhere, other people are like selling, and you want to compete on SEO or other channels, and you got to really like milk it out and like squeeze the extra drop of performance, like then you won't be able to do that with Shopify because you can't, like, it's not customizable to that end, right? And so that's how I would judge, right? If you look at like, if I'm starting, is my product differentiated, or is it going to be my distribution and content that's differentiated? That's probably how I would pick.
All right, G, I think that sounds like an awesome, like a flow diagram to making a choice as to which CMS. So I kind of want to see that content coming out pretty soon, right? Just like the awesome G flow chart of how to choose your the ultimate CMS. That's awesome. Well, I have literally lost track of time. I don't know how much time we have, but I'm going to go away and ask another question. And the last question I want to ask, I guess, is what is one of the biggest mistakes you see in e-commerce that so many companies make again and again? Like the ones that are just painful because you see them everywhere. And again, Adrian, let's start with yourself. So yeah, big mistake that you see time and time again in the world of SEO, whether it's world of e-commerce.
So I would say actually two mistakes. The first one is that brands don't understand that organic search is a process. You know, you have to get your pages crawlable, you want your pages to be in the index, you want them to be ranked, then you want them to convert. So, and I think if you don't think this way, you are not going to be able to define a strategy for each point or each step of this critical process. Maybe the second mistake that I'm seeing too often is actually a mistake related to the organization of search marketing. And the most successful brands with SEO these days, from my perspective, and we'll see if Aleida agrees, but are the brands that put SEO under the web product management. What does it mean? It means that there is no change published or released on a website that have not been approved before by the SEO product team. And honestly, I think it guarantees that no disasters happen on the website. So at least your foundations are there to last on the long term, and you can focus on your content strategy, on your tactics to benefit from the seasonality or the changes in the search trends that you can track now easily with the modern tools that any SEO teams should have.
All
So
right,
that's it. Do you agree, Aleida?
I do agree. In fact, I don't know if, well, probably you haven't seen, but I actually published a post like a couple of months ago about how to align SEO in the product triangle. And with every age of the product triangle, one of the ages is growth, where SEO is. On the other are the functionalities of the products, pretty much tied with the tech, and then the sales of the products, the conversion, the money making part of the product, and how you need to align every age of it in order to make it the product feasible from a business perspective, which at the end of the day is what we need to play with. It's like, I mean, when we start doing SEO, it's not for the sake of checking all the check boxes saying that the website is perfectly optimized. It's because it needs to be aligned with a business goal on achieving certain type of objective that will make the company profitable. And yes, indeed, it needs to be aligned with products, updates, and functionalities. It needs to be aligned also on marketing campaigns, seasonality, connecting with audience behavior. So yes, I see that it needs to be very ingrained, and 100% I see that in most cases we don't forget about the marketing side of things, so how aligned needs to be with marketing, but also with product to make it something core. And this is how we also avoid the products of, oh, someone changed my canonical tags or my Azure Flag annotation. I didn't notice. Nobody told me this type of things, right?
Absolutely. I think that's normally, I don't know if you'd agree with me on this, but normally what solidifies those three edges, I like that triangle, is a really
does
solid...
the blog post, Aleida. We want
Sorry?
to read your blog post, Aleida.
I will definitely, I will definitely
Sure.
send to you product triangle SEO, and you will find it. Integrating the SEO within the product triangle. Yeah.
All right. I like it. I'll be looking out for it.
Yes.
And yeah,
so,
G.
Yeah, sorry. I do actually have my own I will say challenges that sorry, Luke. I had even I was so excited when you asked for challenges, and I already wrote them. I need to get them out of my chest to make me feel better. Don't make me think about issues without actually complaining about them, right? So the first thing, and then again and again, somehow, e-commerce websites indexing their internal search results. I mean, why still today? Like, you don't have a proper taxonomy, categorization, facets, targeting these queries anyway. Why you don't tie or connect together your internal search results to refer the user directly towards them, right? So too many websites still indexing their internal search results, or trying to use their internal search as a proper navigation system or browsing system. So no. Yeah, indeed. Then second, I hate this approach of rule of thumbs saying something like, oh, everything after the second level category or second level facet is no index or is canonicalized to the parent category, right? No, this needs to be flexible, and it's about supply and demand at the end of the day, right? And so you need to make a proper keyword research and understand if there is a product model whose color is highly searched and very popular. For example, black Yeezy shoes. Sorry, but you will need to index that second level facet color page, because otherwise you will be leaving a lot of money on the table if you don't, right? And then, of course, properly optimize it, properly internal link to it, etc. Then the third and last one will be that a lot of people still have a hard time in e-commerce on how to optimize the category pages and integrate content without losing the transactional or commercial type of intent, because they realize that in order to be able to rank for certain queries that are clearly not informational, transactional, the point is that the competitors are ranking them are more relevant, have more content, have more offering, and they try to force things by featuring a guide about the history of the iPhone in the iPhone category that has nothing to do, and it's not the proper content to go there, right? So open your mind as a marketer, as a salesperson, and the role of that page is to be of that salesperson, mid of the funnel, describing the choices that you have at that level of your shop, describing them, pros and cons, different alternatives. So it is possible to integrate content very well that is connected with the commercial nature, that doesn't challenge or negatively influence the conversion of those type of pages. And you can test this too. And so I will highly incentivize to content people and SEOs also to open your minds more towards that, right?
So maybe I can complete what Aleida just said, because what you're telling us is that we should all have a data-driven approach to understand how people are searching, what are the pages that are related to the queries that are being searched, etc., etc. So maybe one KPI or two KPIs that can share with you that come directly from the Botify customers database. So at Botify, we have the capacity to track the indexation of pages of our customers. And on average, I can tell you that 50% of the pages of a website are not even crawled by Google. So it means that some of the pages are not in the index. For some pages, we are very happy not to see them indexed, but for others, like the product pages or the category pages, of course, if they are on your website, it's probably because you want to sell the product that are listed, and probably because people are searching for them. And for those strategic product categories, I can tell you that I would say on average, maybe 20-25% of those pages are not crawled within the last month. So not crawled means not discovered by Google and very unlikely to be indexed in the end. So that's a big mistake. If you have the inventory of relevant content, of course, make sure that this content is crawled and refreshed by Google regularly.
I like that. See, real live insight. You see that? That's awesome. You ain't get that anywhere else. All right, cool. G, last but not least, man, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
I think for me, you gotta look at the customer experience you're creating. You know, I started my career, I'm afraid to say, almost 20 years ago at Apple. And I learned a lot about how to create this unique customer experience, right? And when you're trying to create loyalty, which is, you know, the end goal of like a merchant and a brand, because we all know that repeat return dollars are much cheaper to acquire than net new dollars, right? You got to think whether your channel is SEO, whether it's paid or any other channel, like what's the experience that you're creating? And is this a good experience? Can you improve it? And how does SEO integrate within a larger channel mix, right? Do you have a comprehensive strategy where if the person is acquired through SEO or from somewhere else, then there is a follow-on strategy that will happen when that person eventually leaves your site, because that will happen to 100% of your audience, right? To bring them back and back again, all right? How do you think through that? How is the content that you work through all of the channels, paid and non-paid, coherent, right, together? And most of the time, when I do advisory and I look into, let's say, the acquisition mix, I see incoherent messaging that is being pushed across multiple channels, right? Somebody comes for a specific vertical, and that vertical, there's no deep linking. And there is the emails that are being sent on to that audience do not mention that vertical of products, and same for the ads. And so that is a destruction of value, and it's a destruction of customer experience. So you really want to create an awesome customer experience that makes the people want to come back because they were delighted by what they saw on your site.
I love that. I love that. That's all really, really powerful stuff. So I think we're kind of out of time, but there's one thing I'd love to kind of throw in as a last tip, and that's non-commerce or non-product centric search queries. And we're about to see it again with, well, we've seen it again already with COVID, but we're about to see it again with the rise of Black Friday, which is coming real soon. So a lot of people go to sites, they search for COVID to see if you're still open, if you're, you know, practicing social distancing, if you're all about it or you've been ignorant to it. But think about people who are going to go to your site and actually search for Black Friday deals on the site search. And there are so many brands, Homebase. Yes, you. There's been loads of brands in this particular space where if you search for Black Friday, you get no results found because there's no product called Black Friday, but it's very much an important site search query. So make sure you are optimizing for things like returns policy, customer service, phone number, returns address. They're not product centric, but they are queries that people must care about, and you need to provide an experience for those. So I think we're at time.
And a Black Friday landing page that doesn't change from year to year, please.
Yes. Mic drop. Just. All right, awesome. Listen, I have had so much fun with you guys. Thank you so much for bringing me on this. It's been a great conversation. Lots of really juicy advice and tips and support across e-commerce and SEO and choosing a CMS. It's been awesome. So yeah, Aleda, G, Adrian, it's been brilliant. It's been an event. So thanks for joining me on this. Lengow Day. It's been fun.
Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks, good sir. Thanks, Luke.
Bye.
Thank you, Luke, Aleda, Adrian, and Guillaume for your insights. So I'm sorry if your office doesn't have a rooftop right in the middle of Paris, but mine does. I like to come up here to get away from my cosmopolitan work life and take in this incredible view of the Eiffel Tower just behind me or the Sacré-Cœur over there. Without sounding too sentimental, it's like my own window of Paris. You know what else is like a window? Marketplaces. Think about it. They're like a window for your e-customers to the offline world.
Well, thank you, Sophie, for the introduction, and thank you, Lengow, for giving me the stage to share some inspirational thoughts and some inspirational words about how e-commerce is evolving and how the offline and the online worlds are blending in more and more, and how that is driven by marketplaces, this evolution. But before we go into this kind of evolution, we still need to review why are we doing this? Because the old statement still stands. You have to be there where consumers spend their time. And consumers spend their time on marketplaces. And why is that? Why do consumers spend their time on marketplaces? And that is because marketplaces are winning the war on customer attention. We have a certain amount of time per day which we can spend on digital interfaces. The maximum, more or less 6 hours that we can spend in a day to look at screens. And that time is flattening out. We simply don't have more time to look at digital screens per day. But the amount of commercial offerings, the amount of products online, keeps growing and growing and growing, and is still growing. So we simply don't have the time to review all the commercial offerings during the day. And that's where marketplaces come in. They combine all the online offerings. So we have one place to go as a consumer where we can review all the products and we can compare prices and service levels. We can go to a marketplace, and there, as a consumer, we are sure that we find what we are looking for. Marketplaces are winning the war on customer attention. And marketplaces are more or less owning the digital interface. They're owning the screen. But this war for customer attention is more broader, because they're not only fighting for the customer attention, they're fighting for interfaces. And that's what we call interface imperialism, in which ambitious e-commerce companies are trying to own every touch point of the consumer journey. So it's not only the screen, but all other touch points in the customer journey they're trying to own. So not only fighting for the customer's attention, but they're also fighting for owning the interface. Because if you own the interface, then you own the customer. If you own the customer, then you own the data. And if you own the data, you own the future. So the fight for customer attention and the fight for owning the interface towards the customer, that is what's going on right now. So, and the interfaces, both online and offline, they're blending in more and more together. And an example is a robo effect, in which consumers or customers do research online and purchase offline. And they can do that upfront. So consumers, they go to a marketplace, for example, Amazon, they look for a product, they look for a price, and then they decide, I want to have this product, and then they go to a shop to buy it. But the consumers also do the research real time when they are in a shop and see a product for a certain price, and then they go online to look for reviews, to compare if the price is right, and then make an instant buying decision based on the information that the marketplaces provide. So the research online and the purchase offline, or vice versa, that is something you really have to take into account. So not being present on marketplaces will cost you offline sales, and vice versa. And for long we have thought that the high streets will be dead, but actually that's not true. You have to invest in omni-channel experiences. And it's also interesting that, according to our future shopper research, that also the younger generations prefer to buy with brands that have both an offline and an online experience. The next example of blending in offline and online commerce is, of course, augmented and mixed reality, in which, for example, you can you look at your living room, for example, and you have a product on your telephone, and then you can port for example, a couch in your living room, so you can see if it fits. You can see if the color you like. So you can really make a better informed decision if the product that you want to have fits into your offline world. And one problem is, of course, as an e-commerce company, you need to have the content, which can be quite complicated, but this will drive more sales and also prevent returns. So looking at augmented reality would be an interesting point to have a look at. The next thing is social commerce. Of course, we've seen Facebook, Instagram, also TikTok, Snapchat, Pinterest. They're all implementing checkout features. So in a sense, they become marketplaces, but the dynamics are totally different. People, they share something about their lives. They share what they eat, they share what they do, they share what they are interested in, and they can promote products, and also on socials, more and more you can immediately buy those products. So you see that what other people are using, you can make an informed decision about, oh, I also want to have that, then immediately check out on Instagram. So that's another example of blending in the offline and online worlds. People, what they do, what they eat, what they're interested in, they share, and that is combined with the digital interface to immediately buy the products that other people have. But what we've seen, and the past examples, the interfaces that they're all screens. And we've seen before that the time that we spent on screens is flattening out. So other interfaces are also popping up, and the war for owning the interface and for getting the customer attention goes off screen actually. And they're coming in the zero UI interfaces. We have the Amazon Alexa, we have the Amazon Alexa and the Google Home, of course, which are voice interfaces. And we have, we're gonna have glasses in which you can see and immediately buy products, for example, or microchips that we can implant into our bodies, which we can immediately check out in a shop, or for example. And also brain interfaces are coming up more and more, are being developed. So we only have to think what we want to have, and then products can be automatically ordered. So and the zero UI interfaces, they are you can imagine everything, but without using a hand, without using a screen, we can buy research products. And then of course we have the programmatic commerce, which is a term coined by Wunderman Thompson Commerce, which is that appliances do the ordering. So as humans, we don't have to buy products anymore, because appliances can do that for us. For example, a coffee machine, you configure the brand, you configure the flavor of coffee that you prefer, you configure a price range, and then when the coffee runs out, your coffee machine automatically orders new coffee. Or a car can order new motor oil, for example, or printers can buy new toners. Refrigerators notice when your milk is running out and then buy it. And not even appliances, but maybe also we can enable your pets, your dog, for example, to buy its own food. And then, well, these are all terrestrial interfaces, but at some point we're gonna go out of space. If you see space not as the next frontier, it's just another interface. And a lot of entrepreneurs, Elon Musk, for example, Richard Branson, they are all looking into space, and especially Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon. When he built Amazon, the infrastructure on Earth was already there. There was the internet, there was the logistical infrastructure. The whole infrastructure was already there for him to start and to build Amazon. But out of space, there's nothing yet. And if you can build the infrastructure and if you can see it as a new interface, because we're going to go out of space, because we run out of space on Earth, so we have to go into space, whether it's for mining purposes or maybe we're going to have production facilities out of space and then we ship the products back to Earth. If you can build the infrastructure, then you own a totally new interface to the customer. But doesn't matter where the consumers are, whether it's on Earth or not on Earth. You have to be there where consumers spend their time across various channels. But how do you actually do that? So first, you can go to marketplaces and you can sell through retailers. You can sell direct to consumer via your own brand and web shop, or sell on social media. You have to be there where consumers spend their time. You may have different type of consumers. You may have different consumers that have different interests. So you need to take all these channels into account. Where do consumers spend their time and what do they do there? Do they go there for inspiration? Do they go there to buy a product? What are they doing on all those channels? So take all your channels into account. Look at what your consumers are doing there, and then balance these channels. And you balance these channels based on your assortment, you balance your pricing, you balance your acquisition, commercial and media strategy, and you build an organization behind it to take the most out of your channels and to make sure that you have a consistent consumer experience. But for each channel, you have to optimize. And first, it starts with building. You have to build and you have to align your balanced channel strategy with your business strategy and your organization. And then for each channels, you make sure you have operational excellence. You list the products in the right category. You build your organization behind it to deliver a good customer experience and a good proposition. So, and then you have to make sure that you convert, and you do that by compelling product content, really engaging product content that really attracts customers to your products and convinces them to buy. And for each channel, that's very different. For Amazon, the dynamics are very different than on Instagram. So you need totally different types of content, but you have to make sure that they are compelling, engaging, and that they convince the customer to buy. And on top of that, you do your media and trade activation. Then you accelerate, you boost your visibility and you boost your conversion. And last but not least, you innovate. You review what you do, you evaluate what you do, and you improve what you do. So it all starts with, you have to be there where consumers spend their time. And I cannot repeat that enough, because this is where everything starts. You have to consider, where are my consumers buying? Where are they finding their inspiration? How did they stumble upon products? How do they research products? And that is where you balance your channels out to find an optimal, consistent customer experience, as well as offline as online. So again, you have to be there where your consumers spend their time. And we at Wunderman Thompson Commerce, we can help you with that. We, for marketplaces, your online retailers, or your own branded web shop, we can help you balance those channels. We can help you with the strategy, your experiences, the content and campaigns, the analytics, and the technology. And we do that for some great clients, where we optimize channels and balance channels to, well, inspire growth for them. And also with Group M, we run the WPP Center of Excellence for Amazon, in which we combine all global knowledge about Amazon to make Amazon the best channel for our customers to squeeze the most out of Amazon for them. Well, my name is Nicky. I work as a marketplace consultant with Untitled Commerce. I help our clients to succeed with marketplaces. Feel free to drop me a note. The contact details are here, and I'm happy to help with all your marketplace and commerce challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicky, for your insights on the future of marketplaces. It's that time of day again. Coffee break. How many coffees is too many coffees? I don't know, because I'm a coffee addict. Coffee is my fuel. But then here we do have sustainable coffee, so the team has a clear conscience. Sustainability in e-commerce is becoming more and more important. Discover in our final conference how you, as brands and retailers, can embrace the opportunity and reiterate your commitment to a new circular model to increase your profits and stay relevant.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome again on the Lengow Day event. I am Cyril Duplessis, and I'm going to manage this roundtable about the circular economy and more specifically about the circular e-commerce. 2 quick words about me. I am 44. I've been working in the digital from up to 20 years, and I am the host of the podcast for e-commerce leaders, the digital doers. So the main question of the day is, what is the circular e-commerce? Which initiatives are being introduced? Probably you have some example in mind, like Patagonia, Pack Market, or Vestiaire Collective. To go in the details, we are lucky today because we have 3 nice personalities around this virtual roundtable. The first one is Vega Svensson, CEO at Continued Fashion, the world's first white label platform for circular retail in the fashion world. Vega is a sustainable fashion expert, public speaker, and award-winning serial entrepreneur specialized in innovative business model based on circular economy. Also, we have Stéphanie Crépin, circular fashion and second-hand luxury expert, founder and CEO of Reflaunt.com and StyleTribute.com. Stéphanie brings to the luxury fashion industry innovative technologies and tools that enable leading brands to embrace the circular economy trend. And also, we have Ben Whitaker from Circular, founder of Circular, a global secondary market expert through leader, who was recently launched his new company, Circular, providing e-commerce optimization solutions to retailers, brand and brand owners. So, Vega, could you introduce yourself a little bit more in details than I did and share with us, according to you, the definition of circular e-commerce?
Yes, so my name is Vega Svensson. As you mentioned, I've been an entrepreneur in the fashion industry for the past almost 20 years, focusing all the way along on sustainability, and for the past 7-8 years, especially on new business model based on circular economy, circular retail, or circular e-commerce, you could say. And what we try to do in our company is to help brands introduce new business models and new way of offering their products to the consumers. We think it's very interesting to focus on the consumer models rather on the supply chain when we talk about sustainability, because we can see, based on many researchers and LCAs and things like that, then the way to create true impact in the fashion industry and in consumption in general is to focus on the consumer models and change them. So this is what we try to help the brands do in a low risk, easy way. So for me, circular e-commerce is well, it's basically two circles, you could say. So it's one circle where one product is shared between many consumers in a systemic setup, and it's a material circle, a material loop, where an infrastructure, which would normally be a technical infrastructure, creates an opportunity to collect the products after use and recycle them.
Okay, so thanks very much for your introduction. Also, the first answer about circular economy. The question is now for you, Stephanie. Can you introduce yourself and answer the question? What is the circular economy for you?
Yes. So I'm Stephanie Crispin. I'm initially based in Singapore. I started my entrepreneurial journey around 8 years ago, and started my first venture called Style Tribute, which is a luxury secondhand marketplace. And building this first startup and secondhand marketplace and being immersed in circularity, I started a second company called Reflaunt. And Reflaunt is born out of all the experience and insights that I've collected through Style Tribute, and that facilitates or empowers brands and retailers to embrace circularity and to integrate within their business model a resale service. So very concretely, through Reflaunt, you can shop with a brand. 6 months later, you want to put back on sale your bag. You go back to the brand's e-commerce, and next to it you have a resell button. Once you resell and push that resell button, it gets listed across a network of marketplaces across the globe, and you finally get the choice between being paid in cash or shopping credits. So I really moved from a B2C company, peer-to-peer marketplace, to a company where we accompany the brands, retailers in the first-hand industry to integrate within our traditional linear model, circularity and secondhand. So what is circular e-commerce? I think Vega's definition was really good, so I'm going to try to be shorter, but so for me, it's an e-commerce that facilitates repurposing of past purchases through different models. That could be the rental, that could be the recycling or upcycling, that can be the resell with the swapping. And basically that promotes the extension of product life cycle through these models or through these services.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for your introduction and the definition of e-commerce circularity. Ben, this is for you now. Can you introduce yourself and tell us what is your definition of circular e-commerce?
Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Whitaker. I'm the founder of a startup called Circular.com. More recently, I was the EMEA director for the world's largest B2B re-commerce business, a company called Bstock, who are a Silicon Valley based company that organized large-scale liquidation auctions for retailers, manufacturers, and distributors. So it's a B2B environment that I've come from. My experience in e-commerce is pretty similar to everybody else, in that I've been in and around e-commerce for around 20 years, in various modes, but mostly around the secondary market. And I've seen significant changes in the way that businesses have operated, scaled up, and how they're starting to be impacted by external factors that are making them look at sustainability in a way that they probably weren't having to before. And I'm a firm believer that if we weren't in the current situation we were in with the COVID, that actually sustainability would be absolutely top of every retailer's agenda at the moment. And I think that there are an awful lot of opportunities to help businesses to be less impactful in the way that they operate, and circular is going to help them to do that.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Ben, for this short introduction. As you said, circular economy is more than a trend. This is something which is quite new in the economy. I mean, new, not really new, but more and more used by the brands and by the retailers. In France, we can see a lot of examples about brands that are moving on second-hand offer. Let's speak about Jacadi or Cyrillus for kids fashion. They now offer to the customers the way to buy second-hand clothes. We also can see Fnac Darty. In introduction, I was speaking about Back Market, which is a big player, but this is a new player, a new startup, and from the beginning, his business is built up on circular business. How do you see the traditional brands taking over the circular economy, moving on it? Is that just a trend, and they want to like for sustainability, they want to show to the customer that they are compliant with this kind of expectations from the customer? How do you feel this move from traditional brands moving step by step to something new, second-hand offer? Vega, do you have an idea about that, or do you want to say something?
Absolutely, yes. So I think before Corona hit the world earlier this year, I think that we did see a lot of brands in the fashion industry already focusing a lot on circular e-commerce, but as you say, very much as a marketing story, because it's just a nice story to tell. And then during the Corona, we just something changed, and now I think it's more a matter of actually not a nice story, but it's a matter of risk management, because what we saw in Corona was a very fundamental problem about product value for the brands. So because the world shut down, just as you were about to send all your spring summer products into the shops and retailers all around the world, it meant that all the brands they ended up having a lot of inventory with brand new clothing, but at no value at all, because the window for it had passed. So now we can see that there's a fundamental need for new business models, and it's born out of risk management and not from a marketing perspective. So what we do see now is that maybe this is not when we speak to brands, we do not speak to the marketing director any longer. We speak to the CEO, because this is actually a strategic matter, and I think that's perfect. So we saw the evolution in who we are talking to is interesting, because 2 years ago we spoke to the CSR manager. 1 year ago we spoke to the marketing manager or head of marketing, and now we speak to the CEO. So you can actually tell a lot from that evolution in regards of circular e-commerce and the future of circular e-commerce. So it's actually getting serious, which I think is great. But it's born out of pandemic situation.
And according to you, the CEOs are really aware about this new, let's say, mindset about circular economy. Do you need to convince them about the added value of this model?
Of course, the level of matureness is different, differs from brand to brand, of course, and CEO to CEO. But so I do see a acknowledgement of the need of new business models, and that there's an acknowledgement of the fact that the industry is too vulnerable at the moment, because the window for you to sell your products at full pricing is getting shorter and shorter, and the timing. We need so few incidents in order to fuck that timing up and eventually create a catastrophe for the brand, because you end up having a lot of inventory at no value at all. So there's definitely an understanding of that problem. But what we also see is that there's no understanding of how to run a circular business model. Yeah. The metrics in the business model is very difficult for brands to understand, and they do have a feeling that, or they are very afraid of introducing this in their sales channels, because they have a feeling that it's taking money from, it's cannibalizing the existing sales channels, which is but that's a huge concern among the brands. So they understand why it's necessary, because they have felt it on their own body during the Corona time, but they have no idea about the metrics and the business and the nature of circular e-commerce. So this is definitely what we need to around this table, what we need to help them understand.
Okay, that's super clear, Stephanie. I was seeing you moving your head. How do you? How do you? Do you see? How do you see that? And how do you see the traditional, let's say, traditional brands trying to move? They don't fully move yet, but they try to move on a new way, on a new business model with more sustainability, more second hand and circular economy. How do you see that?
Yeah. Before answering that, I just want to bounce back on what Vega was saying at the end. I really think that now, sustainability and circularity we're past that time, right? Everyone is convinced that we need to do it. So it's not a matter anymore of convincing certain departments and making sure that the projects get seen by the right people. It's top of the agenda of all companies, right? At least in the fashion industry, and I can agree and repeat what Vega was saying, is that this year we're talking to the key executives at a strategic level of companies. But what's interesting right now is much more, and what's much more key is the challenge that these companies have and that the industry has to embrace and integrate these new models, right? Because the whole infrastructure, the whole supply chain was based on a traditional linear business model. So it impacts every piece of the value chain, right? It impacts, your infrastructure and your logistics. It impacts your sales and your marketing, because suddenly your customer journey doesn't end at the moment where people have purchased the item and have been delivered. No, it continues. It's extended. So how do you integrate that piece in your whole marketing and communication strategy? So it's interesting to see how different brands are coping with that. I think the logistical part is probably the most intense one and the most problematic, because when you look at resale, there is a lot of challenges around building a scalable logistics around enabling and facilitating your customers to resell their pieces. So that's the real challenge, I think, is what Vega was saying, is not convincing them, is how to incorporate it at every step of your value chain. Now, this being said, the way that I see it is that what's interesting with circularity is that while you have many sustainable initiatives or green initiatives that we've had in the past, these almost have there's almost a negative connotation to it, because often, and sometimes not often, but part of the times, it didn't make sense financially or economically. From a circular perspective, or circular models make sense economically and financially. And this is what is amazing, is that there's no trade-off to be done between your sustainability goals and targets and your economical or financial goals, right? Because if you look at circularity, you're able to capture a new market audience. You're able to create loyalty. You're able to drive economies of waste of resources. So it opens up a whole new world of economical opportunities that we didn't have before. So that's what I think is really interesting. And that's why it's gaining so much momentum versus other initiatives that are much more long-term and financially heavy. Building in a circular model within your existing and traditional business makes total financial sense, right?
Okay, that's super clear. And Ben, Stephanie was speaking about the operations, and the operations are key because you need to think in another way to execute your business. How do you see that in yourself? Because in circular, you are really concretely doing operations. You expect to do reverse logistic in another way. If I understood correctly, your value proposition. How do you see that?
I think you have to start from the premise that retail is an inherently forward-looking operation, and the space that we all operate in tends to be in the space what I call past the order button, or almost past the certainly where you're dealing with returns, or you're at a point where you're past the order button, you're at the point where the customer is cancelled, and then you've got to figure out what's going to happen with that with that product. So it depends. There are various challenges, and I think that probably the biggest one at the moment is, and I concur with a lot of what's just been said, but I'm going to push back on a little bit, and I think that operationally, businesses are still very, very challenged about how to actually make a meaningful contribution towards sustainability. They know that they're being scrutinized on it, but many of them actually lack the internal knowledge to actually know how to take that first step. And when you look at a business which has been around, and I'm going to step away from the apparel business because I've got two panel experts on here, and I'm not going to try and get involved in that one too much. But you've got an inherent problem in terms of reverse engineering processes to actually make them now become more circular. And as much as we'd like to be able to have a business which completely does less damage, whichever way around you manage it, these businesses have still got to make money in the interim. There's no point being sustainable and broke, right? Because as a brand, you want to move forward. You want to engage with new customers, You want to take them on that journey with you. But equally, you've got to stay trading. And the bigger the organisation, I think there's a saying, big ships turn slowly, right? And the larger the organisation, the more difficult it is to actually put that whole thing into play in a meaningful way to make it actually make a difference. And I think when you look in the apparel industry, clearly there are different ends of the spectrum. You've got the high-end luxury brands who actually, when you stand back, they're relatively low unit production on an annualized basis. You go to the other end of the scale and you look at the fast fashion guys who are running tens of thousands of SKUs that they're refreshing often on a daily, weekly basis on really, really short runs. And they all sit in the apparel and the fashion industry with completely different sets of challenges, right? And I think that when you look at that and you start to think, how long have these businesses been around? What space are they in? What countries are they selling in? How are they sourcing? How are they designing? And how do they then start to change that? It's a big challenge, big challenge. And I think it's really important that we don't beat retailers with a stick too quickly, because for some of them, it's about taking them on a journey. And I hate to throw a cliche out there about every journey starts with the first step, right? And sometimes, it's actually about saying, well, look, this may be where you want to be in 10 years' time. But thinking about what we're going to do in the next quarter, what we're going to do in the next 6 months, what we're going to do in the next year. How do we start to re-envisage that? Because you can't just switch from one model to another. But it's a great space, and I think to the point that was made earlier on, it's a good news story. And I don't know a retailer out there that doesn't want to go out there and say, we recognize the problem, we understand the problem, we've got a plan. And you know what? You'll be able to see us, and you can come with us on that journey over time. So there's lots to do, right?
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. And we spoke about where we can address the markets. Our brands, retailers, has to embrace the circular economy, and that's a key point, of course. But they can do it because there are markets. And I would like to speak about the consumers and how we can see with the consumer's point of view, how they see the circular economy. What are their expectations in terms of need, in terms of perception of the market? Vega, how do you see that?
So I see it like this. So the consumers are already doing this big time. I mean, we have seen for the past 10 years the secondhand market exploding, and at the same time also the generation Instagram exploding, and so we have consumers that are used to changing ownership of products. No problem about that. It's already there, the behavior on the secondhand market, and we also have consumers that need new clothes all the time in order to, the Instagram generation, in order to create content and value on social medias. So the consumers are already doing the circular e-commerce big time. I'm not sure they are very aware of it, but they are doing it already. It's not like a huge cultural shift we need in the consumer segments, not at all, especially, of course, not the younger generations. So for the consumers, this is just great news, because they have been doing this for a long time, but facilitated on the secondhand market and secondhand platforms. And now we are actually moving into a new era where this, because what is interesting is that for the past 10 years, where the secondhand market has been growing very fast, at the same time, the brands have been moving away from the consumers more and more. And today, the distance between brands and consumers are very big. There's a huge gap there. And it's crazy, because today the brands, they have no idea about how the consumer uses their products. They have no idea about what happens with their products when it's sold. Not at all. So the interesting things, and here I talk about the fashion culture, the interesting things happens in the triangle between the consumers, the secondhand platforms, and the social medias, and not between the brands and the consumers. So, of course, we need to help the brands enter that triangle and become part of the culture again, which they were back in the days, but they are no longer. So, I think that the consumers are already doing this big time, as I said, and for them it's just good news. Then that now this way of behavior will actually be reflected in the brand's sales channels as well.
And do you see a segmentations? I mean, you are speaking about the young generation and the Instagram generation, but for people who are oldest, I mean, because when you are more than 40, probably your behaviors are not exactly the same than people between 20 and 30. And on the market, do you think the needs and the way the consumers see the circular offer are the same segment by segment, or because you are speaking about the easy consumer? Yeah, tell us.
I'm speaking about the younger consumer segments, which is super interesting because it's a huge consumer group, but of course the older segments is very important as well, and I think that they have, of course, a different behavior pattern, definitely, but it goes for them as well that there's this problem that the brands, they don't know how to actually be relevant in their lives. I'm 48, and I don't think that any brands know how to be relevant for me, actually, because they have no idea about how I use their clothes, and that's a problem, in all age groups. My behavior is different than my kids' behavior, definitely, when it comes to fashion consumption. So for me, it's much more to do about. It's about services. It's about having a way of consuming that makes it easy for me, that is relevant for me. So the narrative and the selling points will be different for me, of course, than for my kids, because the dynamics for me as a fashion consumer are different. But it's still super relevant, but more focused on the service side of it. That's at least our experience, because we do work with brands for younger segments, but also for older segments. So we do have some experience.
Okay, cool. That's really interesting. And Stephanie, according to you, how do you see the markets?
I think, 12 years ago, we assisted to the emergence of companies like Airbnb. So companies in the shared economy, right? And I think circularity, rental, secondhand is shared economy based models, kind of. So fashion was inspired to that. And what we see in regards cross industry is it's really driven as well by an optimization of our wallets and of our usage, right? Resell captures that idea that when you buy something, you will be able to resell it at a certain moment and capture the residual value of that item, right? So you're optimizing basically your use out of that product. So financially and economically, that makes a lot of sense for customers. And I think that, this will only accelerate and continue on growing, because that's how we consume today, our vacations, our taxis, our bicycles, but also fashion. There will be different models coexisting, swapping, resell, rental. But I think that will be there to stay. Now, as Vega was saying, is that now and the years to come, it's the first year where it's really integrated in also the first-hand shopping, right? It's not working in silos. It's not a separate market. You don't go, I mean, before you went to buy something, the same customer went to purchase its Chanel bag, and then 6 months later or 6 years later, he sold it back on another marketplace, right? So we're talking about the same customer and the same product going through two complete different experiences. What I think is tomorrow, we will have one seamless integrated experience. And this is what we call circularity, right? So it's connecting those two worlds into one. And I think that's what, the brands and retailers want to capture, is they still want that to happen within their brand experience and within, their brand ecosystem. So that's what we're working on with Refund. Now, the second thing as well that Vega was mentioning was around, I think, the customer understanding and the consumer and the understanding, which is, it's very interesting. So before you went in a shop, you purchased your item, but the moment you were out that door, the brand or retailer didn't know how you interacted with that product, how many uses you had with that product. After how long did you give it to your little sister? And with circularity and with these different models, you start having technologies that allow traceability and that allow the brands and retailers to build insights and much more customer understanding around how people are using and interacting with their own brands. So that's, I think, is super powerful. And we see it, with Refund, when we talk with brands and retailers. Part of our product is a dashboard that allows them to see, well, how their own customers are reselling. So what's the resale activity? Who are the customers that are buying secondhand? So it's potentially, the aspirational kind of customers that could become loyal in the future to that brand, right? But today can't afford it. And then the third kind of data that we're collecting is the retention and loyalty. Once those first-hand customers resell that item, do they take cash? Do they take shopping credits? Do they purchase again with their brand? How are the interactions, right? And what is the communication all about? So that opportunity to communicate again with their customers is very powerful through the narrative of, secondhand, product life extension. And that's what, is I think, is where brands have stars in their eyes when we start talking about resale.
That's really, really interesting, because we can see that the distance Vega was speaking about between the brands and the consumers is something really concrete. Ben, according to you, how do you describe the market needs or the market approach or the consumer needs with the circular economy? We understood with thanks Vega and Stephanie that the consumers were already using and really comfortable with the circular approach. According to you, how do you see that?
I think it's worth remembering that marketplaces like eBay, I think, have just turned 25 this month. They are a prime example of a consumer-to-consumer marketplace where people have finished using a product and want to resell it onto another. There's a lot of new products, obviously, on eBay, but eBay's origins are in the secondary market, and I think that to Vega's point, this is an extension of something that's been going on for years and years and years. Just technology has enabled different solutions and different ways to approach it and envisaging it. I was interested to listen to the comments about the gap between consumer and the brand in the fashion industry, and I'm going to say that I think that's probably specific to that industry because there's no electronics in it. Because if you look at the IoT phenomena, with this connected system of data flowing backwards and forwards, you could argue that certainly in the consumer electronics space and in the sharing economy to a certain extent, that brands have never known more about their consumers, and that some of the kickback, certainly in Europe, has been around GDPR. And people having almost too much information about what the user's doing with the product. So I think that brand gap is something that's nuanced. I just wanted to move on. The other thing that I was struck by is how are we going to encourage businesses to be more circular? Well, there are two elements to it that I think that we're going to touch on, and I just want to focus on the operational side of this for a second, and I think that this is true of most categories. That's one of the biggest phenomena that's driven e-commerce has been an expectation of a fast and free delivery service, and we've educated the Instagram generation to say, hey, look, not only can you get this and you can look like this, but you can have this product tomorrow, and that specific promise that's made from the vendor to the consumer, and the fact that it's a fast and it's free, I think is at the cause of an awful lot of problems, because you've got to have the stock, you've got to have the choice, you've got to be able to get it there in the fastest amount of time. And I know, by the way, if you don't like it, you can just send it back, it's fine. But unfortunately, fast and free is anything but free. Just because the consumer isn't paying for it with cash, they're paying for it somewhere else. It's inbuilt into the prices in the products. It's inbuilt into the impact of having all these different logistical systems in place. And I think if we want to start to address how businesses and the e-commerce space can become more circular, by all means, we should be looking at re-commerce. Re-commerce is a fundamental play. But I do think that we need to start to look at how we re-educate a generation of buyers that have been brought up on fast and free. And I think that we also then start to think about how we create these products in the first place. Because, if I take Apple as an example, I think iPhones tend to now have 4 users before they're actually dead. Apple, for all of the criticism that they get for the size of the business that they are, they're very good at actually recycling products, and that because of the value of the products, people use them, and then there's an inherent value in them, and somebody else wants to buy it. That's great, because you're using that product until, in effect, the latent can't think of the word. The latent redundancy of the technology becomes to the point where the product physically doesn't work anymore. So there are so many ways to approach this, and I think that we've got to start with how we educate the buyers. Then we've got to think about how we get the products to them, why their expectations are what they are, and then what happens when they don't want it.
Yeah. Ben, can I?
Okay. Yeah, Stephanie.
I find it's interesting to see how circularity will also have an impact on the quality of products, right? Because as of the moment where you educate customers, or not educate because they're educated on that, but they start really integrating the resale part in the way that they shop, then they're much better off, and they'll do the calculation very quickly by buying something that is worthwhile, that will stand the test of time, versus an item that has no value on the secondary market, right? And I think it's interesting that you take Apple. I'm a bit more I'm part of those that criticize it because I have the impression that my products don't stand the test of time, but you know that much more than I do. But I think circularity and secondhand will push brands and retailers to take the responsibility of the quality of their items. And those that are able to put on the market products that last will be rewarded by market share, because consumers will be drawn to those items that they know when they resell will have a certain value. You don't resell fast fashion. I mean, you do, but then what do you get out of it? You know, a few dollars and so much pain to go around and reselling it.
Yeah, that's right. And you resell Zara clothes on Vinted for a couple of euros. It's not the same story. Yes, Vega.
But I think it's very interesting what we're talking about now, because I mean, the key to success in circular e-commerce is to understand the perception of value. So this is something that the brands they have no clue about today, because for them value is a much more simple profit calculation rather than the long-term relevance, to understand how to create a long-term relevance and by that create a long-term profit on a product. So the value perception is super interesting. And as you say, Stephanie, fast fashion we have no great value perception on fast fashion, simply because the brands themselves, the fast fashion brands, they have no they do not treat their own product with great value as well. I mean, because it's just, if you walk into a shop during sales, you can see how disrespectful brands are treating their own products. It's crazy. And I mean, of course, the consumer behavior reflects that as well. And that's not a brick in the success of a circular e-commerce business at all. On the contrary. So understanding how to create a value perception that can actually exist for a long time is very interesting. And that's why it's so difficult for brands to actually just integrate this in the existing business models, because this is the opposite of what they do today. And so that's really interesting. And what we also see, that the industry itself has a lot of myths. And one myth is that a product can only be relevant for 26 weeks, because then that's like the cycle of the fashion industry, especially in the fast fashion. But if you look at what is happening on the secondhand market, the products that are actually performing very well, they are typically much older than 26 weeks. So there's a whole other value perception and opportunity that the brands have no idea about today, which is, I think, one of the key things to create success in circular e-commerce.
If I can just come back, Cyril, if I can just come back on a couple of things.
Yeah. I'm going to leave you the word of the end, because we have spent all the time almost. So Ben, yes.
Wow.
What do you want to say?
I was just going to touch on the fact that I think luxury's got a real problem in fashion, because when you take the circular perspective about least waste, greatest value, highest usage, luxury products by definition are not essentials. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how luxury is going to reposition itself going forward, and how it's going to stay relevant to a new cohort of buyers that come through. I think that's a great thing to look at. I think the other thing that I just wanted to touch on was the comment about remarketing fast fashion. I'm actually going to completely disagree with that, because I think that when you remarket fast fashion, you're selling that product to a buyer that's probably looking for function over form. And if you've got when you look at a portion of the market which probably isn't as affluent as, or certainly not as affluent as the luxury market, they're buying for value. And if they can buy a pair of trousers or a shirt or something for the kids, which is cost effective and is going to last for a while, then I think there's a great opportunity in there to reach an audience who would like to who have aspirations and would like to buy something as fashionable as they can, but actually are limited by value. And you can discount that. You can discount that market. I think you discount that market at your peril, to be honest.
I think that the point was, I don't know if it was what Vega was saying or myself, but was more around the condition, right? items that keep their condition. It's not after one wear that they're, they shrunk, they've lost their color. Those items will not, or those products and those brands that promote those items will not be rewarded in a world where circularity and residual value after one wear to wear is important. That was, I think, the major point.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephanie. Thank you very much, Vega, and thank you very much, Ben. I hope all of you who are listening and watching us, you spent a good time and you understand a little bit better what circular e-commerce is. We have a really good time. Thanks again for your time. Thank you very much, Lengow, for this initiative. And I hope we will see you soon in real life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie, Cyril, Vega, and Ben for this insightful discussion about circular e-commerce. Oh, what a productive day. So many inspiring speakers and topics. What input? How the hell did I manage to keep up with everything? Thank you everyone for participating in this streaming. Let's just see what the future of this industry holds. No, wait, you thought it was all over? Hell no, it's just begun. So schedule some one-on-one meetings, let loose in the playground, follow some workshops, wake up and get ready.